Hey guys, welcome and welcome back to my channel. So as it's non-fiction November, I've decided that I should make a video. Okay, this is my ode to non-fiction because I actually really enjoy non-fiction as a genre. I really do. So as my nod to non-fiction November, I'm going to do three things. The first thing is I'm going to show you all of the non-fiction that I have on my shelves. The second thing is I'm going to go through all of the non-fiction that I've read this year. And then the third and final thing is I'm going to show you some non-fiction that I'm like really interested in, that I might read in the future and stuff like that. Okay, so with that, let's just get into it because that's a lot of things to be done. Behind me, you can see my non-fiction shelf. It's at the very top. I do have a light bulb light here because it just makes me chuckle because I'm like, okay, non-fiction, smarts, light bulb, do you know what I mean? Like, hold on. Like, ping! I'm actually an idiot. I'm so sorry. Okay, so this is the full shelf in view. Sorry, I'm holding it with my hand. It might get a bit shaky. And let's just go through it. There are 29 books on here. And there's a mixture of read and unread. I'm now gonna like take off books and show you them individually, but I'm gonna go in groups of three. So we have Witches, Sluts and Feminists, we have F It, Do What You Love, and we have Swearing Is Good For You, The Amazing Science of Bad Language, of which I have only read one. I've read Witches, Sluts and Feminists in October. The Swearing Is Good For You is the kind of non-fiction that I'll usually go to. Like, it's just a bit of a deep dive into language and etymology and bad language in particular. I find that really interesting because I have read a book previously on like bad language in like the Renaissance era, and I feel like it is a big part of the human experience, whether you like this well or not. You know, it's good. And I suppose this is going more into the science of it. I don't know what it's gonna say, why it's good for you, but I'm excited to read it. After that, we have F It, Do What You Love, which is more about like, this is kind of more self-helpy, which isn't usually the non-fiction I gravitate to. And it's just like telling you to like release your troubles and do stuff. It says on the back, it's not a book, it's a call to action. So yeah, I got this because I think it'll be good for me. Like, I do sometimes get a bit in my head, and so I'm like, yeah, hopefully I'm gonna read it and see. Someone else, I got this secondhand and someone else has like highlighted it and stuff, which I actually think is a good sign. Like, obviously they got something out of it, you know. Next we have Hormonal, How Hormones Drive Desire, Shape Relationships and Make Us Wiser. I don't know why that was so hard for me to read. Invisible Women, Exposing Data Bias in a World Designed for Men. And The Prison Doctor, Women Inside, and Prison Doctor, The Final Sentence. Of these four, I've read these two, Prison Doctor, Women Inside and Invisible Women, and I haven't read The Prison Doctor, The Final Sentence or Hormonal. So what did I think of these two? I didn't even really tell you what I thought about Witches, Sluts and Feminists. I enjoyed it, but it wasn't amazing. These two, I really enjoyed The Woman Inside. In fact, it almost made me cry, I think, because it was just a tragic learning about like the women in prison, because it's just more like how they've been mistreated by the world and how this is just how they've coped. And obviously it's not best for society and for themselves, but it was just really sad for me. Sadder than the first one. Invisible Women, I really enjoyed it, but I had to get it physically because I feel like it's definitely a readable book because it's based on like data bias. There was like lots of stats and stuff, and when I was listening to it, it was really good. I really enjoyed it, and like it gave me some key themes, but it didn't really stick. Like the numbers and stuff didn't stick, so I have to reread it physically. For the two that I haven't read, I've got The Prison Doctor, The Final Sentence, and I haven't read this one because I've listened to both of the others on audiobook, which means I kind of want to read this one on audiobook too, and I find that I really enjoy listening to them. I am still going to read it, like probably going to read it at the same time. Hormonal, oh my god, when I tell you I'm so excited for this book. I am so excited for this book, especially like, I don't know, I'm just getting more and more interested in how hormones play a role in our life and stuff like that, and actually coming to terms with like my body and stuff, because I know hormones, like I know a lot of hormones by name, but I don't really know them and how they really affect me. So this is really good. I did start it before and I didn't really get that far into it, but what I did read was really good, so that was good. So we have The Prison Doctor, we have Am I lying? So we have The Prisoners of Geography, we have When Breath Becomes Air, and we have A Bit of a Stretch. Okay, so maybe we're starting to see a bit of a theme about my interest in the UK justice system, because A Bit of a Stretch basically follows, I think he was a journalist or something, and he ends up going into prison, into Wandsworth prison actually, and this is him talking through the justice system and his personal experience. Prisoners of Geography, I really enjoyed this. I read this a couple years ago, and it was like my first proper introduction to geopolitics, because it's like it kind of really talks about how the physical landscape really does affect politics and conflicts in the world. And so yeah, it was just really interesting, and it really opened my eyes to that sort of study in life. And then we have When Breath Becomes Air. When I tell you I've wanted to read this, but I don't like to cry at books, okay? I'm a bit of a wimp, so I know I'm gonna cry. I know I'm gonna cry because this is really, really sad, and so that's why I haven't read it yet. I don't know when I'm gonna read it, but I do definitely need to have it on my shelves for when that happens. And this is more doctor stuff, because it's about a surgeon. I'm not sure what surgeon he is. Oh, a neurosurgeon, and then he gets cancer, I believe, and this is his memoir, and it was published posthumously, which is even more sad. We have Your Life in My Hands, which, oh, let me give you the subtitle. Your Life in My Hands, A Junior Doctor's Story. We have Trevor Noah, Born a Crime, and we have The Psychopath Test by Jon Ronson, of which I've read none. And okay, this one, Your Life in My Hands, this is just about a junior doctor in the UK, in the NHS. And that's also another thing I'm really interested in. I suppose it's not really the justice system, but it's like justice and health. I don't know, public services? I don't know, but I actually do really enjoy reading non-fiction about that, because I do think it's important for us to be aware about the country that we live in, and often, you know, it's just good to hear these perspectives anyway. So then we have Trevor Noah, Born a Crime. Love Trevor Noah, and his story I think is really interesting, but I haven't read it yet. And then we have, Jon Ronson, The Psychopath Test. Now, if you know, you know, and I'm going to talk about it later, but I hated So You've Been Publicly Shamed by Jon Ronson. So yeah, but I had this on my shelves before I read the other one, and now I'm really scared, but I'm gonna keep it because I think that this actually might work better for me than the other one. So we have The Secret Barrister, Stories of the Law and How It's Broken. We have Why I'm No Longer Talking to White People About Race. And then we have Outbreaks and Epidemics, Battling Infection from Measles to Coronavirus. So, as I was literally just saying, we've got justice system, we've got health, and then we've got race. So very much about our world, actually. I've read Why I'm No Longer Talking to White People About Race. Obviously, as you can see, I tabbed it up with post-it notes, which means I was chatting a lot. I had a lot to say. Yeah. And The Secret Barrister. Okay, let me tell you about these books. This one actually ignited a passion in me about the justice system, because I just think it's so flawed, and I don't know if I would have known that without reading this book. And then we have Why I'm No Longer Talking to White People About Race, and I feel like this just accurately encompassed how I felt at the time, and how I also kind of feel a lot of the time too, about like, I don't know if I have it within me to entertain all of these questions and conversations about race with people who just don't want to listen, because it actually does just drain your soul. So I really related to that. And then Outbreaks and Epidemics, I obviously got this after coronavirus, and yeah, I kind of like, it's just kind of interesting to me to have a look at that and how it's been in the past, how it was. And obviously I feel like when I bought this, I knew I wasn't going to read it straight away, because I needed some time away from corona before I could read this. But now I feel like I'm getting closer to the point where I'm like, all right, it's fine, I can try it. All on Its Own, Black and British, which is again about race in this country. Oh, I think I'm starting to notice a trend about what I actually own, because I do read a lot of other types of non-fiction, but I don't think it's on my shelves. Anyway, or maybe I don't. Maybe it's just a perception that I have. Anyway, Black and British, I haven't read it because look at it. It's fucking, oh, let me not swear, but it's frigging thick. Okay, I also have bought the audiobook of this on Audible and I haven't read it either. I mean, it's such a good book, like, and I've wanted, literally, my passion for this book has been for years and years and years and years and years. Like, I'm pretty sure since it came out, I was like, You're Coming Home With Me, like, ever since it came out. Have not read it. Have not. I've even watched part of the TV show. I didn't watch it all because I was like, I don't want to get too spoiled for what's going to be in the book. I wasn't going to, but yeah, I've even watched part of the TV show. So yeah, this is just really sad, and that's why I had to go on its own, because tears. Oh, I don't know if I even told you what it's about. It's about the history of Black British people in the UK, like, because there's often a narrative that like Black people haven't been in the UK for a long period of time, like it's post Windrush, but that's kind of like illuminating the Black presence in Britain before the Windrush generation. So we have The Spy and the Traitor, which is the greatest espionage story of the Cold War. We have Sapiens, really battered, sorry, which is a brief history of humankind. And then we have How Death Becomes Life, notes from a transplant surgeon, of which I have read one. I've read Sapiens. Sapiens, what did I think about it? It was actually really good. It's actually really good. Again, I need to reread it because I listened to it on audio as well, and I didn't have the physical version when I listened to it on audio, because otherwise I think I would have been more intimidated. But yeah, I do think I need to reread this because I read it a while ago and I feel like my memory isn't as fresh of it now. So as much as I really enjoyed it and I would recommend it, I feel like tentative, basically, because I'm like, I actually can't really remember it that much. The Spy and the Traitor, I was actually really interested in this because it's about the Cold War, and the Cold War emphasis on used to interest me when I was like back in school, because we studied the Cold War, and I actually found it really interesting because I was like, I didn't even know about any of this at the time, right? I was like, I didn't even know about any of this because I suppose this was like, what, 2016 time? And like, yeah, people are always like, oh, Russia in films, like it's Russian people in films as the bad guys in like spy films, and I just didn't really understand why. I was like, what's all this hate for? And then I learned about the Cold War in the USSR, and I was like, oh, okay, I'm starting to understand now. And it just felt really strange to me that something that ended so soon, like only in like the 1990s or something, did the Berlin Wall come down, that I hadn't really heard much about it. So then I saw this book out and I bought it. However, since then we have had the whole Ukraine-Russia situation, and I have literally zero interest in reading this now because it just hits too close to home. How Death Becomes Life is from a transplant surgeon, which is just more health stuff. So hey, these two random black books without their covers are my books from Ramesh Ranganathan. Ramesh Ranganathan is my favorite favorite comic ever. I literally love him so much. And yeah, I've read his first book, which was Straight Outta Compton, Memoirs of a Distinctly Average Human Being, and I enjoyed it. It was actually really good. Obviously, I'm so sorry, but I am that person who, in these life stories, I do love a picture page. I'd say. But I actually really enjoyed it, but that's because I really enjoy Ramesh and Ramesh's story, and I found like lots of things interesting, especially like when he's talking about how he became a comic and everything like that. I actually really enjoyed it. Then we have this one, Ramesh Ranganathan, As Good As It Gets. I didn't even know what this one's really about, to be honest with you. I have it. I'm glad I have it. I will read it eventually. I just haven't read it yet. Then we have The Opposite of Loneliness, Essays and Stories from Marina Keegan. Then we have Me and White Supremacy from Layla F. Syed. I don't know why I've started saying that surname. I haven't been doing that the whole time, so I'm going to stop. All I Know Now by Carrie Hope Fletcher. I meant after these three. It just felt incomplete to stop then. Of which I have read none. But it's all yellows. How cute. What do I think? Okay, let's start with Carrie Hope Fletcher because it's similar to Ramesh Ranganathan. I really like Carrie Hope Fletcher as an actress. She's in the West End, like in theatre. So I really enjoy her. But I actually don't want to read this book anymore because I bought this years ago when I really liked her. And I think I used to watch more of her. Maybe she used to post more. I don't know. But anyway. But now she's come so far. Like, her life is so different. I'm like, what does baby Carrie know? Baby Carrie doesn't even know what current Carrie knows. Do you know what I mean? So, I mean, yeah, while it's interesting to see what she thought at the time, she was a baby. And I kind of wish, like, if she was to write memoir in, like, I want to say 30 years time, when she's an old woman reflecting, that I would eat up. This I'm still going to read, but less enthusiastic. Then we have Me and White Supremacy again, because I think it'll be good for me to hear it. Obviously, this is addressed to white people because it's called because the subtitle is How to Recognize Your Privilege, Combat Racism and Change the World. But at the same time, I think it'll be really good for me as a black person to like read into like more anti-racism and stuff. And not only that, I think that it will help me, it will give me tools when talking to people. As I said, with one man I'm good talking to white people about race, I'm not really good in those conversations. I'm like, oh, whatever. It's actually not up to me. If you're gonna be racist, be racist. I have nothing else to say to you. So I actually feel like it'll be good for me to read these things and kind of change my attitude. Then we have The Opposite of Loneliness, which I actually am not really that interested in reading. I'm really sorry. But it's about this young girl. This is the woman who wrote it, and she's passed away really young. And so these were her essays and stories, and it's kind of like, oh, it's actually really kind of sad because like it's like the death of it's actually really kind of sad because it's like she could have had so much, like she had so much potential, sorry, and like it was just her life was cut short. We didn't get a chance to see her flourish as a writer, and so I think this was like published by her family of her short stories and her essays. So I really love it. I think it's really touching. However, I'm not really an essayist or a short storyteller, reader, sorry. So yeah, I am gonna keep it, but you know. Final of the stack is this Thickums right here. Wow. This is the 2-book omnibus of A Street Cat Named Bob and The World According to Bob. Okay, so basically this is the story of a guy who was homeless, I think in London actually, not even just the UK. Yes, this is about a homeless man in London, and I think it's about him, and then he encounters this street cat, like this, you know, stray, basically, and it's about their relationship and how the cat saves his life, basically. But yeah, I don't really know, talking about it makes me reinvigorated, because when I was in school, I was talking to a girl who loved cats. She loved cats. Like, I love cats, but she loved cats, right? And she was reading or had read A Street Cat Named Bob, and I was like, oh, that's interesting. So obviously when I saw it, I was like, okay, fine, I'm gonna get it. Even though, you know, that was years and years ago, I was like, fine, I'll get it. Because also the story does really interest me. You know, I think it's a good story. And then I have like tiny little sort of like pamphlet sized things, which is The 1 Minute Manager, Dear Ijuwele, A Feminist Manifesto and 15 Suggestions, and then No One Is Too Small to Make a Difference by Greta Thunberg, of which I have read all 3. Anyway, okay, so we have this book, which I know the author has said some questionable things, but I feel like I read this before then and I really did enjoy it, and I think it was the start of my introduction to like black feminism without knowing it. And then we have The 1 Minute Manager, which was a gift from my dad. I actually only just clocked that now. I even forgot that I had it as a gift from my dad. But yeah, when I went into more of a managerial role at school, my dad was like, here you go, love, this will help you in your life. And I was like, thank you, Dad, he's so sweet. And then we have Greta Thunberg, No One Is Too Small to Make a Difference, which obviously is about climate change, and I really enjoyed it. And this is like a lot of her essays and stuff, so it's not really a deep dive into climate change, but I think it's a good little resource, and it's a call to action as well. So there you go. In fact, I think both of these you could class as a call to action. So that's all of the non-fiction that I have on my shelves. So let's just get into all of the books that I've read this year. Okay, so the way I'm going to film this is that it's going to be a tier ranking, because I just think that's the easiest way for me to show you what I thought of all of the non-fiction that I've read so far this year. Okay, so I created my own tier. I mean, wow. But yeah, I created my own tier, and so the order is 1, Who Needs Fiction, which is basically like, this non-fiction is so good, like why would you read anything but non-fiction, is the vibe. The second one is Here for a Good Time, as in I'm here for a good time, not a long time silently, because it's a good book, but it's not a favourite. Do you know what I mean? So that's why it's like, I'm here for a good time. That's the vibe. And then we have meh. Pretty self-explanatory. It's just meh. And then we have Pass Me a Highlighter. So this isn't actually, I put it here, but it doesn't mean it's bad. It's one of them books that I'm like, I really enjoyed it, but I feel like I needed to like sit down to fully ingest the story. Do you know what I mean? Like I needed a highlighter to go through and highlight things. So it's not a bad book. It's just, I needed to read it with more depth. And then I have It's Not For Me vibes. Okay? Because I feel like I say that a lot. Anyway, let's go. So the first one is How to Behave Badly in Renaissance Britain. I'm going to put it in... Ooh, I'm struggled. Immediately I put it in Here for a Good Time, which is kind of right. But I think it's Here for a Good Time because it's also Pass Me a Highlighter. Do you know what I mean? I need to go back and probably listen to it. Because I feel like when I actually listen to it, I'll change my mind. Because I think it's a really good... I think it's a really good book. But it's all gone. It's all gone from my brain. So... I'm going to leave it in Pass Me a Highlighter, actually, because I need to reread it. And I'm going to do the same for Taste with Poison, okay? Because this was really good. This was a really good book. It's basically about, like, different substances that are used as poisons. And then it, like, gives real-life examples of when they've been used, which is really good. But, again, I was really enjoying it. However, I was, like, losing track of what poison was what. So, even at the time, I was like, I need to stop and I need to reread this. And I think I kind of need to read it physically as well as this. Then we have Witches, Sluts, Feminists, and... I'm actually going to put it in It's Not For Me, babes, okay? Because it was all right. It was good, but I feel like it just wasn't the right non-fiction. And I mean that with, like, no sarcasm. Like, it actually wasn't for me. I feel like, obviously, it was bought in America, so it was based more on American relationships, if that makes sense. Like, it wasn't very European based, which is fine. But I think that when I'm looking for witchy stuff, I'm looking for more of a European lens on it. And so, yeah, I think it just wasn't for me. Then we have So You've Been Publicly Shamed, which I actually mean this in a actual bad way. Like, it's not for me. Like, I hate it. Absolutely hate it. Absolutely hate it. But I feel like I need to stop talking about how much I hate it, because I feel like I actually just hate it so much. And, like, oh, it was just terrible. It was just terrible. But if you've watched... Have I spoken about it in my wrap-up? I think I did. I think I spoke about it in my wrap-up. And so, because I just feel like I keep shitting on this book. So, I'm not going to go into it anymore. Then we have Climate Change is Racist, and I'm going to put it in Who Needs Fiction. Because I just loved how it was a whole book dedicated on the nuance of racism and climate change. And I don't know if necessarily racism is the right word for me and what I want to use. But, like, yeah, kind of. Like, the impacts of, like, colonialism and empires and all of that. And, you know... because it just means that the world has not been created equally. And it was also talking about, like, how racism will mean that the effects of climate change will affect different people differently. Obviously, in terms of countries, like which countries is going to affect. But also in terms of inside a country, it's also going to probably affect, like, black and brown and ethnic minorities the most. So that was actually really good. I really enjoyed it. Black Joy, Here for a Good Time. Which is just kind of funny to me. But yeah, it was a really good book. It was a really good book. I really enjoyed it. It wasn't a favourite, but it was really good to just hear stories from black people about what makes them happy. Like, it's just everything that I want. I'm always talking about how I don't like black struggle. And this book said, well, here you go. And I really enjoyed it. Then we have The Language of Fanaticism. I'm going to put it in meh. Okay, because it just wasn't for me. Or, I'm going to put it in meh because... Anyway, the reason why I say it wasn't for me is because I'm not interested in cults. I'm not. I have no interest in cults. So why did I read this book, you ask me? I don't know. Don't ask me questions. No, but for real, like, why did I read this book? Why did I read this book? I'm not interested in cults. So therefore, like... And I was listening to someone else and they were saying it wasn't about language. But I actually thought it was about language a lot. I feel like, to be honest, it did a good job of balancing both language and cults. But I feel like also the message that she was given was just a bit like... Because she kept talking about, like, oh yeah, so in groups that, like, cultish groups, they're gonna use language as a way to, like, you know, they might have their own keywords and stuff. I'm like, that's just what humans do. So yeah, I suppose that there are some cults who will use this maliciously, but to just label every group that has their own coded language as slightly malicious, even though it's not fully malicious, but just slightly malicious, I was just a bit like, you know. So it was a bit, I enjoyed it. Like, I listened to the experts. I went like, okay, I hear you, being seen, Who Needs Fiction. This is a story from a SFF writer about being deafblind. I thought it was really good. I thought it really made me confront my own internalized ableism, and it was just really good because it focused on lots of different topics to do with deafblindness. And yeah, I don't think I've ever read a book about deafblindness before, and I think I did carry some sort of misconceptions about deafblindness and deafblind children. Then we have Obsessive Intrusive Magical Thinking, and I'm gonna put that in here for a good time. It was good. I feel like the writing was immaculate. The story was actually really interesting, and again, I think it did kind of shift my worldview because it made me realize that, like, it's not sometimes, I think how I used to view things is that people maybe have like eating disorders, and maybe they would have another set of people have like ADHD, another set of people have like autism, and you know what I mean, whereas and another set of people have like OCD, whereas this really confronted the idea when she was like, actually I have pretty much all of them, you know. So that was really interesting. And I think that without knowing it, I think I probably would have like put two max. Like I'd be like, oh yeah, she has OCD and eating disorders, or she's got ADHD and she's autistic. But when she was like, no, the list keeps going, I was a bit like, you know what I mean? It was something that I don't know I fully recognize, but people come in all different shapes and sizes and a whole different bunch of complicated things, you know? Then we have Nothing But the True Secret Barrister. I'm going to put that in here for a good time. Now, it wasn't like a blow my mind like the first one where it was actually talking about the law, because this one was talking about his personal experiences. It was his memoir, basically, the Secret Barrister's memoir. And so I'm like, it was a good time. I really enjoyed it, but it wasn't like mind blown amazing. I mean, the first one was mind blown amazing. This one, I was like, yeah, it was good. Like, me and him probably wouldn't be friends, but that's okay because, you know, it was just a really good book. The Yoga Manifesto, meh. I feel like I've kind of come to a good conclusion on this book, because when I first read it, I was a bit like, so what, you don't want me to start yoga? Like, I don't really understand. Whereas with time, I think I've kind of mellowed towards this book. It's basically just this one woman's love for yoga, and she goes through it and how she's talking about how, you know, it's not perfect and all of the ways she thinks yoga could be better. From, it talks about like the Me Too movement in yoga, it talks about like the cultural appropriation in yoga, it talks about the commercialization of yoga, and it's, you know, how it's been like co-opted and all of that stuff. So it's actually really good, and I think now that I've settled with it, I can appreciate that she's touching on some really good points in that. But at the same time, it was almost like she was kind of like gatekeeping yoga towards the end. She was kind of like, oh yeah, so all of this modern yoga isn't great, and I'm like, but that is the yoga that would help me, because obviously that's the yoga that's accessible to me, is more like of a modern yoga. And I'm kind of like, but yoga saved your life, so why are you gatekeeping? Why don't you want yoga to save my life? That's how I left the book. However, with time, I can accept that she's not saying don't start yoga. She's just talking, and she's just saying that, you know, she doesn't like yoga. And I think, yeah, she is slightly gatekeeping, but that's okay, because I feel like anyone who has belonged to the community and has seen that community change because of things like white women coming along and taking your thing and commercializing it, and you know, all of that, you too would be like, what is this modern yoga? Modern yoga's rubbish. So with time, I've accepted it, and I'm just like, you know, I think it just makes me more mindful. If I was to start yoga, which I do think I want to do, it makes me more mindful about the kind of yoga that I would interact with, which I guess is the point. Then we have Greta Thunberg, No One Is Too Small to Make a Difference. I've already read this, but I reread it again. And I'm going to put Who Needs Fiction, because I think she makes some really good points. I think for what it is, it does it perfectly. Then we have The Natural Health Service, and again, Who Needs Fiction. This is a great book. This is basically talking about how nature and being in nature is just really good for you. I read it at the top of the year, so it's starting to kind of fade from my memory, like all of the exact points that she was talking about. But I just remember feeling like so inspired by it. I just think it was a really good book, and I would really recommend it to people. The Prison Doctor, Women Inside, I literally just spoke about that. Again, it's Who Needs Fiction. It was amazing. I really enjoyed it. As I said, it almost made me cry because it was just so emotional. In Defense of Witches, oh gosh, In Defense of Witches, I'm gonna put a meh, because it wasn't what I wanted for a witchy book, and it kind of made me realise that maybe I'm a hater towards witchy non-fiction, because now I've got two witchy non-fictions which I haven't really loved. So yeah. Then we have From Hollywood with Love, and I'm going to put it in Pass Me, I'll highlight it, babe, because I feel like I need to reread this once I've watch a lot of rom-coms, because this is basically like the history of rom-com and like the boom of it and then the decline and where we stand with rom-coms now, like the most iconic rom-coms and stuff like that. That's what this book is about. But I haven't actually watched that many rom-coms. Like, I kind of like want to start and like do a deep dive of me watching rom-coms, but as for right now, I haven't really watched that many, and so I feel like this book would be great after, like, once you already love rom-coms, this would be a great book for you. And so that's why I want to reread it and like reread it with a highlighter and properly like dive into it and be like, yes, after I've actually read it. Then we have Maid, which I'm actually going to put for meh. I know that's really sad. As in, her story is who needs fiction, because I feel like I think about this woman and her story like often, but the actual book was a bit meh. Like, I think because I had watched episodes of the TV show and the TV show really brought it to life, it meant that the book kind of paled in comparison. But for the actual story, maybe I'll put it in here for a good time, because I don't know, I'm gonna put it in meh, but I don't want you to like judge the book. I think this book is really good. It's about a woman who struggled with poverty and had to become a maid to, yeah, and it's about like domestic violence and domestic abuse and all of that stuff. So yeah, it was actually really good. But I do think that because I had watched the show, it impacted my enjoyment. And then we have Talking with Serial Killers, Super with Psychopaths, and I'm going to put that in It's Not For Me, Babes. Again, I don't want to shut on this book, but I didn't enjoy it. I didn't. Okay? But yeah, that's it. I'm kind of done. I don't want to, like, as I said, I don't want to speak negative on that book. So this is my final ranking, which, to be honest, when I'm looking at it now, is pretty evenly spread, which is kind of interesting. Like, I suppose maybe I haven't really nailed down what I want from a non-fiction. I would say that apart from It's Not For Me, Babes, I enjoy the experience of reading all of the other things. You know what I mean? Like, apart from It's Not For Me, Babes, Pass Me a Highlighter is really good. It's so good that I want to reread it. Meh, okay, fine. I don't really need to read the meh liners either, but I'm not mad that I read those. You know what I mean? I'm just like, okay, like, they weren't perfect, but I still had a good time reading them, I would say, for the meh category. So that's why I really like nonfiction, because I feel like most of the time I have a good experience with it. Even if it's not a favorite, I enjoyed it. Okay, guys, so now we're going to talk about the non-fiction that I want to read. Off the top of my dome, I know I want to read a non-fiction about Henry II, aka Henry Plantagenet, because I've been reading The Mistress of the Art of Death, and he is a prominent figure in it, and it makes me really interested in him as a person. So let me just scroll through my library audiobooks, because I do like listening to non-fiction. That's my favourite way of ingesting non-fiction. It's kind of like listening to a podcast, if you think about it like that, or listening to the radio. It's very similar. Okay, so we have The Covent Garden Ladies, which is about prostitution and the actual women in like the past, I want to say the Renaissance era, maybe. We also have Otherhood, like motherhood, which is basically just about, I think it's about delving deeper into women choosing to become mothers and whether they regret that choice or whether they want that choice, and it's just all about motherhood, but really questioning that as a choice and that as a lifestyle, as opposed to something that all women should just do. I think that's what it's about, and so I'm really interested in that. Then we have The Power of Knitting, which I don't knit, but I feel like it would be fun to knit at some point in my life, so that would be good. Afropean, I wanted to read this for ages, but it's kind of similar to Black British, like it's a bit intimidating for me right now. And that's about Black people in Europe as opposed to in Britain. Oh, also, that's just reminded me that Michelle Obama has come up with her second non-fiction that I definitely want to read, which has also reminded me of I'm Glad My Mother Died by Jenna McCurdy. Everyone has read that. Everyone and their mother has read that. Me, I haven't read it yet. I also kind of want to read some climate change books, because I feel like I have a lot of space and I myself feel like I have a lot of growth that needs to be done with that. So I think some of the books that I want to read is like There's No Planet B. I also want to read like Invisible Lizards and Hurricane Lizards and Invisible something, which is about how animals and nature has adapted to climate change. I'm also going to have a look at Scribd as well, because I know there's quite a few on Scribd that I want to read. Oh my god, I literally just opened Scribd and up came this, like, I don't know, I've never even seen it, but it's kind of like a promotion for a book, and it's called Welcome to the Land of Delusion, sorry. And the tagline is How Fiction Becomes Fact. It's a Scribd original about the dangerous allure of conspiracy theories. I'm actually really interested in that. I actually really am. So that's so funny to me that it just came out of nowhere. Yeah, oh my gosh, Scribd is where I have all my non-fiction. So we have The History of Trees. Oh my god, I started this ages ago and I softly DNF'd it because it was just so good. You know when it was so good that I actually had to pause? That one. I also want to read Other Minds, The Octopus and Evolution of Intelligent Life. Oh, talking about that, we have Hood Feminism that I've just remembered, which is about black feminism. Again, I feel like me and black feminism have some ways to go, so I feel like I need to read some non-fiction about that. Oh, the Sawbones book, The Horrifying Hilarious Road to Modern Medicine. That sounds interesting. Did I say period? I think I said period, but if not, period, which is about periods. Medical Bondage, Race, Gender and the Origins of American Gynecology. I really want to read about black women and medicine, but I'm not sure how much that's going to impact me. The Restaurant, A History of Eating Out. That sounds really good. I kind of like micro histories as well. Care Work, Dreaming, Disability Justice, which I think is like short stories or something about a movement that centers the lives and leadership of sick and disabled, queer, trans, black and brown people. Again, I feel like, you know, I need to confront my internal ableist. Sitting Pretty, The Views from My Ordinary Resilient Disabled Body. Cassandra Speaks, When Women Are the Storytellers, The Human Story Changes. Fearing the Black Body, The Racial Origins of Fat Phobia. Disfigured, on Fairy Tales, Disability and Making Space. F Like a Goddess, Heal Yourself, Reclaim Your Voice, Stand in Your Power. Female Husbands, A Trans History, A Short History of the World According to Sheep, You're the Only One I've Told, The Stories Behind Abortion, A Curious History of Sex, Murder the Biography. I also want to do like a mini deep dive of like God is a non-fiction and also God is a black woman, which I think both confront the image of a white, brown-haired Jesus and God. Bad Fat Black Girl, Notes from a Trap Feminist. And I'm gonna end on I'm gonna end on the pain gap, how racism and I'm gonna end on the pain gap, how sexism and racism in healthcare kill women. You Sound Like a White Girl, The Case for Rejecting Assimilation, The Viral Underclass, The Human Toll When Equality and Disease Collide, How You Say It, Why You Talk the Way You Do and What It Says About You, The Language of Food, Rude Talk in Athens, Eating While Black, Fat Shaming and Race in America, The Case for Basic Income. Oh, that reminds me, Chavs, about inequality and class in the UK. Yep. And also Egyptian mythology. Really random, but yeah, that's quite a lot of non-fiction books, and it's just, to be honest, talking about it has just made me feel like a reinvigorated love for non-fiction. Like, I literally can't wait to pick up my next non-fiction. Like, talking about all of that, I'm like, what are you waiting for? No. But yeah, anyway, thank you guys so much for watching this. My ode to non-fiction is what I want to call it. I don't know if I'll actually call this video, because there's lots of things involved in it, and it's just me talking about non-fiction and all of the different ways that I love it. So yeah, thank you guys for watching. Please like and subscribe if you want to see some more talk about non-fiction, because I definitely will always include non-fiction because it's part of my reading. So yeah, thank you guys. See you later. Bye. I can't sing, but it never stops me.